V, and this is what here? M. So that is MVT, model, view, and template. Understood? So already we know how to write a template. We know how to write a view. Now we are writing model. We are writing which one? Model. Okay. So now we are writing a model. So here, so generally, okay, so generally how Python program communicate with the database. Generally, if you see Python program, okay, in your regular class, you may learn how Python program communicate with the database. For example, I have a different databases, like there is Oracle database, MySQL database, and SQL Server database, right? So what is the name of this database here? Oracle. What is the name of the database here? MySQL. What is the name of the database here? SQL Server. So how Python program communicate with these databases, right? So it communicate with these databases by using what some libraries. And these libraries generally you call it as what? Drivers, right? So these libraries can be called as what? Drivers, or these are called some adapters. Okay, you find what is the name of the library? You may use cx underscore. You may use cx underscore what? Oracle, or you may use Oracle DB. Suppose if you want to communicate with MySQL, you may use what? MySQL connector. You are using MySQL connector for communicating with MySQL database, and you may use PyMS SQL. This is to communicate with which database? SQL Server. Now this is for communicating with Oracle, and this is for MySQL, and this is for what? SQL Server. That means your Python program is, okay, your Python program uses these drivers, these libraries to communicate with what here? Oracle. But what exactly this libraries provide? The functions. These libraries provide the functions, and all these functions are developed by following the rules given by Python. And the rules you call it as which one? DB API. So what is DB API here? Abstracts. These are the abstracts given by Python for developing different database libraries. These are the abstracts given by Python for developing different libraries. Now, is it functions of all these libraries are same or different? Is it functions of all these libraries are same or different? Same. What is the name of the function to connect with Oracle database? Connect. What is the name of the function used to connect with the MySQL database? Connect. What is the name of the function to communicate with the SQL server? Connect. Function names are what here? Same, but implementation is different. Okay, it means all these libraries are developed by following the rules given by Python. And that rules you call it as which one? DB API. So what is this DB API is called as here? Abstracts. What is an abstract? You know, a set of rules and regulations which contain the abstract methods, and these are implemented by database vendors and develop different libraries. Now this is the architecture of which one? Python communicate with what? Various databases. But any database you take, it understand only Any database understand only one language. What is that language? SQL. Any database understand only one language, and what is that language is SQL. And SQL, is it a language? Is it SQL is a database dependent or independent? Tell me, the syntax of SQL will be the same for all the databases. Syntax of SQL is the same for all the databases. Huh? Syntax of SQL is the same for all the databases? No, no. Syntax of SQL is not same for all the databases. For example, if you are working with Oracle, Oracle provided data type called which one? Some varchar 2. It will provide a data type called varchar 2. Here, MySQL provide a data type called which one? Varchar. Yes or no? So this provide varchar 2 and this provide which one? Varchar. Suppose if it is SQL server, it may provide what? Char. It may provide which one? Char. Now suppose if I am writing a program using SQL statement, okay, I am writing a Python program to create a table. I'm writing a Python program to create what? Table. Should work with all the databases. If suppose if I'm writing a create table, this command if I'm writing create table emp employee number is number. Okay, employee name is varchar 2. If I'm writing salary, if I'm saying some number 10 comma 2. Now this is syntax will work only in which database? Oracle. But this syntax doesn't work in what? MySQL, and this syntax doesn't work in what? SQL server. Now in that case, my program becomes database dependent or independent? Dependent. SQL statements has become what? Database dependent. Your Python program is independent. Your Python program is independent, but the SQL statement what you write in the program is a database dependent. Suppose I develop application using Oracle, but after some days I want to change the backend from Oracle to what? MySQL. After some days I want to change the backend from Oracle to what? MySQL. Then when I change my database from Oracle to what? MySQL, then compulsory I have to do changes in what? SQL statements. Because this SQL statement work in MySQL? No. Because in MySQL you don't have any data type called which one? Varchar 2. In MySQL you have only a data type called which one? Varchar. But you don't have a data type called varchar 2. In that case, your program becomes what? Database dependent, but not database independent. Getting on. So the problem with the SQL is the SQL syntax will not be the same for all databases. It may changes from one database to another. For example, if you take a select command, you may write select star from EMP. Now some databases it allows you to write select all from EMP. Now select star from EMP, it is understood by some databases, and select all from EMP, it understood by some databases. Now this query is a database dependent or independent? Dependent. Command is the same, but the syntax is the same or different? Different. Command is the same, but syntax is different or not? Yes. So the limitation of SQL is this SQL, yes, this SQL syntax is database dependent. So every database, now just to see here, every database, a database understand, okay, database understand only what? One language. Only one language called which one? SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. So this is a language which understood by any database. So SQL provides some set of what here commands. It will provide the commands. What are those commands here? DDL, DML, DRL, DCL, DCL, and what? TCL. All these are the commands provided by which one? SQL to perform operations on which one? Database. But the limitation of SQL is SQL statements are okay. SQL statements are what? Database dependent. SQL statements or SQL syntax is what? Database dependent. If application is developed, if any application is developed, if any application or if application is developed, if application is developed using which statements? SQL statements. If application is developed using SQL statements, yes, SQL statements, that application becomes what here? Database what? Dependent. Whenever you do change the database, you need to do changes in which statements? SQL statements. Whenever database changes, okay, so the changes are required. The changes are required in which statements? SQL statements. Whenever database changes, the changes are required in which statements? SQL statements. So to avoid this problem, okay. So modern web development uses what here? ORM. To avoid this problem, modern web development uses what? ORM. ORM. Yes. Why we are using ORM is the problem is this. Understood? So why we are using ORM? We are using ORM to communicate with what? Database. We are using ORM to communicate with what? Database. It means you are not using which statements? SQL statements. You are not using SQL statements in your program. Let ORM generates what? SQL statements. You are not creating any SQL statements. You don't know SQL? No problem. You don't know SQL? No problem. Because you are writing the code in Python only. You are writing which code? Python code without using SQL statements. But database understand SQL. You are writing Python. There should be some mediator or not? Yes. Who is that? ORM. Understood? Okay. So if anybody asks, now can you communicate with a database without SQL? It's a typical question, right? Can you communicate with a database without SQL? Is a typical question. Means you should say yes or no. Yes, no, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Using ORM. No, because database understand only SQL. ORM responsibility is converting into which statements? SQL statements. You are not using SQL statements, but whose responsibility here? ORM. Getting on. So ORM. What is ORM stands for here? Object relational mapping. Yes. What is ORM stands for here is ORM. Yes. Are you getting or not? So what we are talking about is a model. Why we are learning models to communicate with the database. But how you build these models by using what? ORM, object relational mapping. So ORM stands for ORM. So ORM stands for object relational what here? Mapping. It's nothing but communicating with the database, communicating with the database using what? Object oriented programming. Communicating with the database using what? Object oriented programming, not using SQL, not using SQL. Communicating with the database using object oriented programming. Understood? Communicating with the database using object oriented programming. Yes, right? So communicating with the database using object oriented programming. So ORM tool, yes, oops concept. Uh, so communicating with the database using object oriented programming. But but I said no, database understand only SQL. Now whenever you talk about database, okay, within this database you have a translators or not? Yes. Which translator you'll have? SQL translator. Okay, it is having which translator? SQL. Okay, it means this database understand only SQL, but you are communicating with the database using what? Object oriented. You are communicating using what? Object oriented. But database understand what? SQL. So there must be some converter required or not? Yes. There must be some converter required or not? Yes. So what is that converter here? ORM only. ORM tool. It means what you are doing it, you are writing the code by following the rules given by whom? ORM. You are developing a model or you are developing a Python program by using the rules given by what? ORM. Getting or not? This ORM defines some set of rules and regulations to communicate with what? Database. Then you are writing a program by following the rules given by whom? ORM. Getting or not? You are communicating with the database using ORM. That means you are writing a Python program by following the rules given by what? ORM. Then what ORM responsibility is? Converting your Python code or converting your object oriented programming into which statements? SQL statements. Converting into which statements? SQL statement. Which SQL statements? Database. Okay, database dependent. Okay, it will convert into which statements? Database dependent SQL statements. Database dependent. So database dependent which statements? SQL statements, and communicate with what here? Database. Now, who's the responsible in converting this Python object oriented programming into SQL statements? ORM. Now it means you find ORM tools or not? Yes, ORM. You find ORM tool, or you find what? ORM which one? Engine. You find ORM tool, or you find what? ORM engine, whose responsibility is converting object oriented programming into what? Database dependent SQL statement. It means you find how many engines? Different engines for different databases or not? Yes. Suppose if it is MySQL, then you required MySQL engine. If it is SQL Server, you required which engine? SQL Server engine. If it is Oracle, then you required which engine? Oracle engine. But who's providing all this? Django. Who's providing all this? Django only. You don't require to install anything. Django is fully loaded. Everything comes with what? Django itself. It is a complete framework and everything is provided by which one? Django. Yes, I think you understood this one, right? So you are writing the code with SQL statements or without SQL? Without SQL statements. But who convert this object oriented programming into SQL statements? ORM tool. ORM tool or ORM what here? Engine. Right? Yes. So this you can call it as a database. So that is further you do some operations like migrations, make migration, migrate. Like these are certain operations you do it, converting your code into what equivalent SQL statements. You convert your model into equivalent SQL statements, right? So ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping, communicating with the database using object oriented programming without using SQL. You are not writing SQL, but that SQL is generated by ORM. So Django provides a